BSides San Antonio. A huge shout out to our platinum sponsors, which are Island and St. Mary's University for making this possible. And also, we are also grateful for Information Hill Security. I will turn my mic to Dustin. He's going to talk about compliance that breaks. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks. All right, does the mic on? Everybody hear me? We're good?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So here's the deal. Why am I here? So I have about 30-ish plus years in the defense contracting world, federal, military. Ran some of the Army's largest cybersecurity service providers, SOCs. And so there's one thing that the military does not lack, and that is inspections and audits. So I've been through a few, seen a lot. On the backside now, I'm helping companies with Torian do GRC and compliance, getting prepped for things like CMMC, things of that nature. So quick show of hands, who in here has been through any type of an audit, whether that's an ISO audit, a CMMI audit, CMMC? Okay, so a good number of us, right? So hopefully we should have a common thread. I don't know that you'll see something that's going to be like, oh my gosh, this is shocking. I can't believe that he said that the disconnect between GRC is compliance and operations, right? Like we all write great policies, we all write great rules, and then you publish those thinking that it's magically going to happen on the operations side, only to show up at the site and nobody is wearing a badge, and you're like, what the hell's going on? Why aren't you guys complying to all these great policies that I wrote, right? So true story, this actually is an important piece of GRC, is understanding the intent versus what the result is, right? So this happened 1800s in colonial India. So the British said, hey, we want a control here. We want to get rid of all these cobras. So what did they do? They said, oh, cool, I can just breed cobras and we can get paid on every cobra we bring in, right? So the population started breeding cobras. Intent was not met. They killed the program. All the breeders of the cobras let them go. And then there was more cobras in the Indian population than there ever was before. So I liken this to a lot of times people in the GRC world have great intents, right? A lot of these controls and STIGs and things that we're implementing, they have great intent, but sometimes the way that they actually get implemented causes more problems than what the intent is actually set out to do, right? It's the letter versus the intent of the law. So something that we have to do on both the operations side and as auditors is we have to realize what the end goal is, right? Sometimes you have to look back from the opposite end. The intent is for us to do the mission. The intent is for a company to make money. So if we do rules and put things in place that stop us from actually doing the intent, yeah, we may have met the letter of the control, but now we've totally hosed what the intent of the operation is, right? So we have to do things like defense in depth and put other aspects and controls in place so that we can still operate the mission successfully. Does that make sense? And I'm going to try and get through these slides quickly. I don't have a ton. I do tend to ramble and talk a lot. So operational controls versus some weak controls, right? So we've all seen this, I'm sure, implementing controls everywhere. This is why auditors and a lot of IT guys love technical controls. So I can put a technical control on you and say, hey, for your password, it has to be, 14 characters. It has to use uppercase, lowercase, special characters, this, that, and the other thing. Can't be, certain rules we put in place. So if I just had a policy out there that said, hey, everybody's going to do this, and I did an audit of actual people's policies and password, or I did an audit of that policy and looked at people's passwords, do we really think that people would be following that rule and not have I love cats as a password? No, absolutely not. They're going to do what people do, right? I love people. They're my favorite and worst thing about running management. So we put technical things in place because it makes it more assured that when we come as an auditor, we're going to have those actual controls and things in place. So we want to make sure that we do things like continuous monitoring. We don't want to monitor it one time before the inspection kicks off. We want to make sure that we have a history to show what we've been doing the whole time. And then automated evidence. So we're going to talk about some of these later on, but it's one thing to say, hey, we have a change control board that meets every week, and then you show me a calendar invite on your calendar as part of your evidence that you're doing change control for your company. That's a no-go. That ain't going to get a pass in an inspection, right? What I want to see is I want to see meeting minutes. I want to see, audit logs, change records, things of that nature. And you can automate that to pull from certain areas and dump into evidence folders so that when an auditor shows up on site, you're doing more than just trying to scramble and say, hey, look, we talk about some of these things we do, but we don't actually have a folder or we don't have any actual hard evidence that proves what we're doing. So let's talk about that evidence. If you take a hard look at some of the things that you're implementing across your company, whether that's for a CMMI inspection, an ISO inspection, CMMC, and you're looking at your evidence, will your evidence actually hold up to what the auditors are looking for and will actually prove what they're saying, right? Like we were talking about. You can show me calendar invites all day long about how you have meetings and collect change control boards. You can even show me screenshots of, your antivirus is installed in your endpoint. I don't care. That's great. But what I'm really asking is, are you actually doing scans with your antivirus? Where's your scan results? Where's the remediation of scans that you found that there were bugs, right? Like I want to see the holistic look of what you're doing. I don't just want some screenshot that you have installed your antivirus. That isn't going to pass the cut anymore, right? We've moved past a lot of what used to be just a check the block type of inspections now. We see the federal government is really moving into what's called an implementation. I know that CMMC has been around for a little while now, so there's, how many defense contractors in here? Is there a good number of us? Okay, so there's a few of us, right? So the same thing that I hear in this ecosystem a lot is, oh man, it's super expensive. There's a lot of things that we got to do for this CMMC to get to level 2, blah, 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 all this, right? Well, here's the crux. NIST 800-171, like these controls in NIST for cybersecurity aren't new. They've been around for many, many years. The problem is that we as contractors were supposed to self-attest and say, yep, I did all these things. And the government said, I don't think you're really doing them. So we're going to put a program in place to check to make sure you did it. And now everybody's scrambling and they're behind the power curve because they really didn't actually implement any of the things, right? Which is why we're seeing all the lawsuit and litigation and the False Claims Act come to bat, because they're like, well, what do you mean you've been performing all these high-level cybersecurity programs, but you didn't have vulnerability patching in place in your company? That's ridiculous. I'm going to take all your money back because you should have been protecting that, right? So that's where we're seeing some of these things fall off. All right, so let's look at some good, bad, and ugly controls. MFA. So I see this one a lot, and I'm not saying that I haven't done some of these things myself. As examples, I'm not saying they're not things that I've seen at other places or in organizations that I've ran, but these are just some quick examples. So, hey, we all know everybody has to have MFA, right? So we write a policy, we push out MFA. It's 100% across the board. It's great, right? What happens? As soon as we push it out, we start getting emails. Hey, this script that I wrote that requires going through this API to pull this information and move it over here doesn't actually, it has to log in, but it can't use MFA because it's a service account, right? So what do? We write an exception to it, right? Then our CEO is like, hey, I need to go to Europe for a vacation and a conference, and I can't be bothered with MFA, so I'm going to need an exception for a week, right? While I'm gone, right? Okay, so we write an exception for the CEO so he can go to Europe or Hawaii, wherever he's going that week, and attend that conference. And then does he always remember to ask to put the MFA back on his account when he comes? Probably not so much, right? So we start to see these things tack up. And then when we would come back and start looking at audits, 6 months, a year later, we see all these holes and gaps in what we thought was 100% implementation of our program, right, in our control. So that's one example of some things that you see actually break. And again, I'm trying to move fast so we can get through this. And you can ask questions of me if that is what you desire. So where do we see compliance actually breaking? So in my experience, we see compliance breaking from the disconnect between where compliance lives, right? Usually there's a compliance section, right? A PMO or a contracts person or something of that nature is running the GRC program. They're checking the compliance, making sure all of our ISOs are in place, making sure all of our corporate certifications are in place. And then what they don't do is they don't go back and reverse engineer it, if you will, and start looking, how is this actually done on the operations side of the house? Let's see how they operate. Is there something that we can put in place that is going to not disrupt the operations from happening and allow them to easily be compliant with the control without having to change their entire operations, right? When we're designing GRC and we're implementing this in our companies and for other customers, we need to take that sort of a mentality into account. If you're asking your operations leg of anything to completely change how they operate and work, the chance of that control actually surviving contact and being compliant 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, 36, whatever down the road, the chances of actually sustaining are very, very small. Because you've asked for a complete organizational change. So whenever you're designing these things, the key is make sure that whoever owns your GRC is tied at the hip with the people that are actually implementing these controls, and they're taking those into account when they're actually doing them. So what are some of the most common failures we see? Enforcement, evidence, and alignment. So we talked kind of about the MFA. Evidence, touched on it, right? I've seen it before. It's not enough to just tell me you do something. You can't tell me that you scan your systems for vulnerabilities, but then you have no scanning results. As an auditor, I'm gonna fail you on that. That isn't enough, right? You can't tell me you do configuration change management, but then all I see is calendar invites and I see no actual memorandums or baseline changes from your systems. I have to see stuff like evidence, where your baseline was, the change record, what changed and what your baseline is now, right? We have to see this pattern and you have to prove your evidence. So a lot of times we go in there like, okay, cool, I see you do these CRBs. Where's your actual minutes? Where's your actual change records? Oh, well, then we see organizations starting to scramble. Because why? They haven't been living the GRC. They haven't operationalized what the control is. They know the control, and that's a big deal. Most companies understand the control. But what they don't do is they don't have the internal discipline and accountability to ensure that they're living that control every day so that it's naturally kind of producing the results that they need for the actual inspections when you get through them, right? And then alignment, I think my man Run GMC up there talked about it in the last briefing, right? I've seen this 100 times, which a company will go out and buy a tool and they think it's gonna save their skin, right? Whether that's, oh, hey, here's a 100% CMMC compliant environment. Buy this and you're good. That's a lie, y'all. I'm here to tell you. I've been trying to propagate the gospel on Facebook and LinkedIn, follow me. But I have a thing called a big crayon brief where I try to make it really big for leadership, so they can understand it and use small words and big crayons. That's a lie. There is no outsourcing who is responsible for these audits and inspections. The owning organization is always responsible. You can outsource some IT aspects. You can outsource some of your incident response. You can outsource a lot of things, but ultimately you as a company or as a CISO or whoever owns this are the one that is responsible to make sure when the inspectors come asking that you can answer these questions. You can have others in the room, but you own it, right? And buying a CMMC compliant tool ain't gonna get it. Buying Splunk ain't gonna answer your log issue, right? Buying CrowdStrike ain't gonna answer whether or not you do threat intelligence. You can have the tool and never look at it. So where do most controls die? Anyone want to take a shot? What do you think? I've seen companies with great policies, but then they didn't write down how they're actually going to perform those policies in any detail, right?
And exception because there's a policy, but they don't even read it.
Yeah, seen that.
Not there.
Yep, 100%.
It'll be in the evidence.
And the what?
It'll be in the evidence.
And the evidence?
Yeah. Okay, where your evidence is that you actually robbed an incident, where you actually verified the MFA is actually implementing the controls. Where's the evidence that you eliminated passwords or system access is not being used?
Yeah.
That's documentation. We all constantly write documents, but it takes months to, weeks to months to actually put into practice. And at that point, they just kind of fall off.
Yeah.
Let's say it's operations. You implement the control, but in operations is where everybody with the wrong mindset comes in and scrambles everything, gets the wrong again.
Yeah, exactly. So we have a policy. We need to do threat intelligence. We have a procedure. This is how we're going to do threat intelligence. We have a tool. We bought CrowdStrike. We've implemented it, right? Okay, now nobody uses it. That's not operational. But that's where you're going to see, right? And the reason it's not evidence is because that's a result. That's a fruit of what you've been through, right? That's proof that you've done it. If you're doing all the first four, you're going to get number 5, right? It's like we often say, you get the wet with the water. When you get water, you don't have to say, oh, can I get some wet water, please? Wet comes with it, right? Evidence comes with doing cybersecurity compliance correctly. Evidence just comes. You don't have to produce it, right? You shouldn't have to scramble. So compliance is a byproduct of your actual GRC, right? It should be a byproduct. If you're doing it correctly, again, you're not scrambling. It should just, evidence should happen organically. So you're not trying to find change records. You're not trying to find evidence and stick it on this dead tree. Because you have all the healthy roots down there, your people, processes, technology, everything is humming and operationalized and working together. It's going to naturally produce the things that you need to produce. Now, that's where we go back into the earlier slide, right? Now that we know these things are being produced, we need to make sure that we have automation tools and AI and all these things enabled to automatically pull these particular evidence pieces and put them where we can put them so we can reference them quickly and we can answer the auditor's calls when they come through and we're not searching and scrambling for stuff. Okay? And with that, I have maybe 5 minutes left. If anybody's got a question or two for me, we can chit-chat about that. Yeah.
I'm dealing with hundreds of systems.
Mm-hmm.
With dozens of different groups and each of the systems with different organizations all within infrastructure. So what approach have you taken to pull together all these disparate groups so that the evidence proves here, here, and here ends up with the right groups so they can prove their each of their systems actually meets that standard? But often you have to have annual proof review to get that done. Organizations too huge just to buy 2 projects will die, as you said.
Yeah.
How do you get past that gap from the implementation operation so you can go with that?
So what I've seen successful at a lot of different organizations is ultimately those 3 organizations or 4 organizations have to roll up to somebody who's looking at the same standard across all the organizations. You also have to ensure, I think some lady said earlier, that you have things, you have standardization across and documentation put out saying, hey, here's the templates, here's how we're going to do all of our collection, here's all the things and how it should be laid out, right? And then we've also found to be successful is because, again, in large scale organizations, you have to implement some sort of, we've had success implementing agentic AI because that's great at checking templates to checking artifacts from team to team to team, looking for differences and variances. And we've even used that to say, hey, now that you're seeing these variances, do an analysis and create a training for the different sections independently so that we can address what's missing on their particular evidence folders, right? So there's a lot of different methods that you can do, but for me, it almost always has to funnel back up to a single point of control to get that standardization across the board.
Would that mean this have positive verification communication with each business unit? Is that in other words, whenever your organization distributes the policies, you need a positive check off from each leader. If you have 20 groups, you have to have positive verification that each of those groups is actually understands the inputs, has access to implement. That's really your key is implementation.
Yeah, it's you gotta have. I mean, honestly, that's a cop-out answer for anybody, right? Communication is key in any organization, but I think even beyond communication, which is vital, you have to have accountability. And what I'm starting to see across industry too is people rolling some of these compliance and triggers into performance records and reviews for your particular job, right? So, hey, have you been doing, whatever your control is? Hey, we've been having an issue with our people not doing their time in accounting every day like they're supposed to. Well, guess what? Now, manager, that is one of your definable things within your review, and it's going to determine whether or not you get a bonus at the end of the year. Have you been make sure you've hit X percentage of people always, right? So if you found a huge issue or a gap within your organization, that's a great tool that you can use to kind of tighten up some certain things. Yeah.
Great presentation. Thank you. Preaching to the choir, no teardrop, GRC.
Yeah, this is probably all the choir for the most part.
By design, I didn't really hear any speak of AI. Was that by design? And then when the controls failing, you didn't mention test of design, test of effectiveness. Was that more just controls failing as a whole based on design and effectiveness, or just you didn't even want to go down that rabbit hole?
So some of us only got 25 minutes to speak.
Yeah.
So, of which I have 4 minutes left. But yeah, I mean, I obviously, we're an AI company, so we develop and implement AI products for different companies, whether that's in CMMC environments, secure environments, or just, lead development. So that is something our company personally does, but I didn't want to get too salesy. Because I don't like sitting out there being sold to, so I'm sure y'all don't either. And I wanted to just keep it real super high level. But yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, we're using a lot of AI tools. The only caution I would put out there to industry as a whole is make sure you understand where your AI engines live and what they're connected to and talk to, because it's a lot of companies and people have embraced things like ChatGPT and Claude and different things. But if you're working in a secure DoD environment, or even now, more of the CMMC where it's just federally controlled information or CUI, you can't put that type of information into those public systems, right? You can't have your co-pilot in a commercial 365 environment touch FCI or, it could touch FCI, but it shouldn't touch any CUI or anything like that, right? You gotta understand who in your company is using what tools and for what, right? That's part of your data flow. And that can really put you in a bind once auditors go around and start doing interviews of people. Yeah.
Can you give us a brief on maybe some of the most problematic but reasonable, like roles, boundaries, excuses for control failure?
Some of them, honestly, people are the most common reason for a control failure for the most part, right? So, a simple example, right? We have a sign up log at the front of our desk. And when a visitor comes in, they have to be identified, they have to be signed, they have to have a visitor badge, right? Because we got CUI in our office. So if the visitor's walking around without a badge, I don't know if they're authorized to see certain things, right? And oftentimes as I walk around the company, I'll see people bringing visitors around without a badge. I'll go back and check the visitor's log, nobody was signed in. That's not a policy failure, and it's not a hard control. It's just people not following the intent of the control and understanding, wait, this is important. If we don't have this, right, we're going to see this failed control, and that's going to be a problem for us. But there's just a ton of controls out there that you could say, right, like don't forward information or emails to your Gmail accounts, right? So we have technical controls in place to catch that, because why? People do it. My old drill instructor used to tell me there's a reason why there's a label on soap bottles on shampoo that says don't drink, right? So somebody drank the shampoo at one point, right? So no matter what controls you put in place and no matter your best of intentions, people are going to people, and they're going to do what people do. So that's why we love a good technical control, and we have to do audits continuously, because we don't want to find out 6 months, a year, 24 months down the road, nobody was signing anybody in. And now I'm scrambling trying to backdate my, CRB minutes or doing my certain things, right? And I'm in a bad place. But that's where the intent of the GRC wasn't married up with operations. And then now we have a problem because it hasn't organically been producing the evidence that it's supposed to produce. That's my time. If you got any questions, feel free to come say hi. Thank you.